Well, going through cancer, any kind of cancer, is really hard for everyone. But going through breast cancer and losing the one part of you that has been identified as a symbol of femininity for centuries is truly difficult for women.
But nowadays, women have options, in fact, multiple options. And to tell us all about it in this week's edition of The Doctor Will See You Now, we've invited double board certified plastic surgeon specializing in breast restorative surgery after cancer and founder of the Institute for Advanced Breast and Reconstruction is Dr. Dhivya Srinivasa. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
You were definitely qualified for this. Boy. All right, so before we get into breast cancer reconstruction, government's got some new breast density guidelines. Can you tell us about the additional screening that's going on now?
Yeah, it's actually really exciting that the FDA took the step to mandate that women know what breast density is. Because the reality is that lingo has been in our field for a while. And so it's nice now that women get this letter that tells them after their mammogram, hey, you have dense breasts. And what breast density is essentially a ratio of how much fatty tissue you have to breast tissue in your breast. So if you have more breast tissue, it's more dense. So not only are you more likely to develop breast cancer in that breast tissue, it's actually harder to detect on traditional mammography. So you may want to get a screening ultrasound or MRI in addition to that. And which one you need or when to get it can really depend on your specific circumstance. So if you know that you have dense breasts and you get your mammogram, you get that letter, I always say have an intentional conversation with your provider saying, what does this mean for me? Do I need an ultrasound? Would that help? If you are someone who has an increased risk of breast cancer, whether it's family history or genetics, then you may even qualify for an MRI. But the first step is to know that you have dense breasts and then have that conversation.
All right, fantastic. Let's talk about breast cancer reconstruction. It's a big deal. And is it covered by insurance?
It is, actually. So since the late 90s, there's actual federal mandate that the insurance companies have to cover breast reconstructive surgeries for women who are having operations for breast cancer. So, and I want to dig into this a little bit because I think a lot of people don't actually know this. They don't know that it's covered by insurance. And not just the initial operation, not just the first operation that you may have along with the mastectomy, for example, but subsequent operations, future operations that you may need are also covered. Or what if the side that had cancer doesn't look like the non-cancer side? Those symmetry operations that can be performed on the non-cancer side are also covered. Prosthetics are covered, and even sort of mastectomy adjacent complications that can arise like lymphedema, treatment of those conditions also covered.
Okay, your practice has a technique called implant-free technique that you specialize. What is that exactly?
Yes, so another thing that a lot of women don't know about, they don't know that they can get a full breast reconstruction without ever using an implant. And this is a technique that exists in the specialty of microsurgery, which is a specialty in plastic surgery. It requires additional training, but it essentially allows us to move tissue from one part of the body to another. Well, plastic surgeons being creative, we are able to take fat, for example, from the lower abdomen, like you would with a tummy tuck, but instead of doing it for a tummy tuck, we can repurpose that tissue for a breast cancer reconstruction.
It's like a 2-for-1.
That's right. Well, that is right. It can be the silver lining, though, for women who are going through this journey. And we can borrow techniques from cosmetic surgeries like a tummy tuck to tighten the ab muscles, contour the abdomen. And it's an implant-free reconstruction, so you don't have to worry about some of the complications that come with breast implants. It's all natural, and I can essentially sculpt that tissue to create an aesthetic breast reconstruction. So the whole process can really look like a mommy makeover, for example, where you're doing an aesthetic abdominal operation and you're restoring the breast. And it's a fantastic option that I wish every woman knew about if they had the unfortunate circumstance of going through a breast cancer diagnosis.
So speaking of that, women who have been diagnosed, are there tips, wellness and health tips that you can share?
So many, so many. I love talking about this. I think, unfortunately, self-care is kind of the first thing that goes out the window when something stressful happens, but it really should be the first thing that you bring back into focus. So depending on what your treatment is, what you're having done, there may be certain untoward side effects. Often, I would say women ask me about hair loss and chemotherapy. If you are concerned about hair loss, there are treatments such as cold capping, which is something that you can do along with your chemotherapy treatment to minimize both the short-term and permanent hair loss that you may suffer from chemotherapy. Another common thing, eyebrows. Sometimes women lose their eyebrows, so I often recommend microblading ahead of time before you start chemotherapy, just to anticipate some of the changes that may come. Radiation can change your skin, for example. And the reality is that a lot of these are nuanced conversations kind of around the treatments that you're having. And so this is actually the very reason why I've really put my heart and soul into launching a wellness brand next year, specifically to target these situations, these moments of transition, healing, treatment, and creating products that are really optimizing the use of safe and efficacious ingredients that can get women through these times.
And so obviously you're very passionate about what you do, so thank you for sharing.
And very knowledgeable, that's for sure.
Yeah,
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Doctor.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, for more information on Dr. Srinivasa and the Institute for Advanced Breast Reconstruction, you can log on to their website. You see it right there on your screen. Kai?
Thank you again.
Yeah, and the doctor does